Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a senior and accomplished professional from the world of films and an author from New York, USA, Ela Thier. Ela, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Ella is the founder of the Independent Film School. She's also a writer and a director and an author of a book titled How to Fail as an Artist, My Best Tips. So, Ella, my first question for you, what first drew you to filmmaking as a form of expression?
Um, I think I was a storyteller before I could talk. I
Uh-huh.
think as an infant, I figured out that I could use my imagination to create the world I want to live in.
Mhm.
And once I saw my first movie, which was Mary Poppins, when I was 3 years
Mhm.
old,
Mhm.
I was sold. I wanted
Amazing.
to be Mary Poppins when I grew up.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And was there a defining moment when you realized storytelling would become your life's work?
Um, Let me think about it. Yeah, in grade school, I was always writing stories. I used to, my mom and my school teacher, because I couldn't stop writing, they used to give me headlines from newspapers, and I would write stories that I would make up based on those headlines. But in grade school, I went to see a play, and it was a musical, and I was just like, wow, I didn't know that this was a profession, making things up.
Mm.
And so after that, the next day at school, we didn't have any, it was a poor neighborhood. We didn't have after school activities or anything like that. And so in the recess, I stood up and I said, I'm doing a play if anybody wants to join me.
Mhm.
And a bunch of kids joined me out on the playground. And we spent many, many weeks creating this play that we ended up performing for the school. And it was such a success that after that, I was forever an entertainer. There was no going back after
How
that.
interesting. How interesting. It's amazing to have found your passion so early in life. Fantastic. Ella, independent filmmaking is not an easy path. What has kept
No.
you committed during your difficult years?
Yeah, if you're an independent filmmaker, pretty much every year is going to be a difficult year,
Right.
with a few moments of relief here and there.
Hmm.
But what kept me at it? One is how much I enjoy it. I just have so much fun. I create films for the same reason that my nephew plays baseball. It's
Mhm.
just that much fun.
Hmm.
And when it gets really difficult, I think I did quit after film school, and it took me a few years to get back to it.
Mhm.
And I think what keeps me persisting is being connected to a big why, to knowing, having a personal mission statement and believing in it. So when it gets hard, when I lose motivation, which is a lot of the time, when I remember my big picture of why I'm making films and what it's
Hmm.
for, it keeps me going. And
Amazing.
people keep me going. The people I work with, that's what
Hmm.
keeps me going.
Hmm. Hmm. As you look back, uh, what have been some of your biggest lessons from your earliest films?
My biggest lessons, um, well, to piggyback on what I just said, when you get stuck, when you stall, it's because you forgot to involve other people in the work.
Hmm.
Um, and this is what I say to my students all the time. If you're stuck, get as creative as you are about the work itself, be that creative about involving people, how to involve people. And when I remember to take my own advice and I involve people,
Mhm.
that's how I get unstuck.
Mm, amazing,
That's the most important lesson.
amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. Great lesson. Ella, you also said that your films help people laugh, cry, and care for one another. Why is an emotional connection so important in storytelling?
Um, why is it important? Well, firstly, I think that's why people watch movies and shows. We look to entertainment to help us unnumb.
Mm.
I think that we live in societies where we're trained to repress our emotions and to stay numb. And this numbness is the reason that we allow for a lot of things to happen that are inhuman.
Mm.
And so, in some respects, I think one of the most important roles that artists play is that we help people unnumb and feel things.
Really interesting.
Yeah, so I know when I write a screenplay, I know I'm not done writing it until it's made me cry
Mm.
and laugh. And when I edit the film or I work with an editor, the film is not done until I'm gushing
Tears
tears.
are
And the
flowing.
tears don't come from sadness, they come from
Mm.
hope. There
Correct.
has to be enough hope for the tears to come.
Absolutely. Well said. But therefore, a follow-up question for you is that what does a powerful story need in order to truly move an audience?
Um, Well, there are two things. There is actual craft that you do need to learn, and it's very learnable. There's a craft to knowing how to keep the pages turning, how to keep somebody watching, how to make the piece so entertaining that you can't put it aside. There's craft to that. But in addition to that, the emotional component is also something that you can learn to do. There are things that you can do as a storyteller that gets people laughing and crying. And I think actually part of what makes my film school unique is that I don't just teach craft, I also teach my students how to maximize the emotional impact of their work.
Mm.
And one little tip, I alluded to it before, is that sad stuff doesn't make people cry.
Yes.
Sad stuff doesn't make people feel. It's hope that makes people feel safe enough to let the bad feelings come out. Because you're not manufacturing bad feelings. We
Correct.
all carry bad feelings. When
Mm.
we watch something that's hopeful enough, we feel the safety for the tears to come.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Very interesting. You have an upcoming film which is titled 109 Billion Followers, and it features J.K. Simmons. Tell me about this project and what attracted you to this.
Um, well, I was fortunate enough through a friend of a friend and of a friend kind of a thing for one of my scripts to end up with JK, who read my script and really liked my work. And we did a table read, and at that table read, I also met his daughter, who's an amazing actress, Olivia
Mhm.
Simmons. He ended up turning that project down, but I had such a good experience with him and his daughter that I contacted him after he turned it down and I said, "What if I write something specifically for you and your daughter to do together?"
Mm.
And he said, "Well, I love your writing. Send me whatever you have." And so I wrote a script specifically for the two of them and sent it to them, and they loved the script. And the rest is history. And now I'm talking to them about creating another project with them. They were
Amazing.
wonderful to work with. Yeah.
Amazing. And when do you release the film, 109 Billion Followers?
We now have a sales agent approaching distribution companies,
Mm.
so I'll know more later this year.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you can talk more about it, but if you can, without giving too much away, what is the theme of the film?
The theme of the film is that our relationships with our parents influence our relationships in the present.
Mm.
And if you heal the past, as you heal your relationship with your parents, in this particular story, it's a young woman and her mother. When you heal that, your relationships in the present are made
Mm.
bigger and more and possible.
It's a very
It's
powerful
uh, it's
topic.
a
Yeah,
it's a very good example of hopeful tears.
correct.
It's a major tearjerker. When you
Yeah,
watch it, have a box of tissues around. You're
I
gonna need
will.
it.
Yes, I'm going to look out for that film. Uh, your other film, Tomorrow Ever After, explored humanity, empathy, and modern society in a unique way. What conversations did that film spark for you?
Yeah, I love that film. So that film is out and available, and Tomorrow Ever After. And in it, I actually do some. I play the lead role, and I play a woman who lives 600 years in the future.
Hmm.
And, you know, often futuristic films are about a dystopian future that's so grim and awful. And I turned that story on its head. So the
Hmm.
future is actually a society in which human beings don't hurt human beings,
Hmm.
in which war doesn't exist, and poverty doesn't exist, and pollution doesn't exist. And she accidentally time travels. There's some physics experiment. She time travels to our days, to our time. So the dystopian society is actually our society now. And she had never seen people hurting other human beings.
Hmm.
So it's a culture shock. And what I love about the film and the conversations it spurred is like all those things that we think of as normal, because we're so used to them, that to someone who lives in a society that's truly human, there's nothing normal about it. There's
Hmm.
nothing normal about there being poverty or about, exploitation or the diminishing of women. There's nothing about racism. There's nothing normal about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Let's talk a little bit about your book, which is titled How to Fail as an Artist, Your
Yes.
Best Tips or My Best Tips.
Yes.
There you are. Show us the book. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Uh, why do you think failure is such an important conversation for creatives? You already told me emotion is, but why is failure so important?
Well, not to sound hokey, but failure is impossible
Mhm.
if uh, the way the way I define success is doing work that you enjoy, that's meaningful to you,
Mhm.
with people you enjoy working with. And if you define that as success, you
Mhm.
could be a successful filmmaker today.
Mhm.
You could grab a friend you enjoy hanging out with and grab your phone and enjoy making a film that's with no money at all, that's meaningful to you.
Mhm.
That to me is a successful filmmaker. You can also, get receive an Oscar and feel like a failure because someone else has three Oscars.
Right.
So, in my experience, no matter what comes at you, how you feel about yourself is what makes you a failure or a success.
Mhm.
So, in some ways, one of the things that I explore in the book is that the whole preoccupation with success and failure are such a distraction. It's an
Correct.
absolute distraction
Correct.
from the meat of it, which is to enjoy the work.
Correct. Correct. Well said. And at the end of the day, everything is relative, isn't it? When you compare yourself to someone else and then you say, but
Yeah, well, it's a matter of perspective,
correct.
how you think and feel about your work.
Absolutely.
That's what it comes down to. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well said. Um, moving on, Ela, my next question is, what are some of the most common fears that stop artists from creating their best work?
Uh, the two biggest obstacles, we all worry that the work won't be good. We
Mm.
all worry about that. And as I write the book, the voice in my head that says it's not a good book, stop writing the book. Nobody wants to read this. I gave it a lot of airtime, so it becomes a character in my head called Mr. Stop, and I have conversations with Mr. Stop so that in the book I write about what it's like to write this book.
Mm.
So we're all afraid it won't be good, and I don't think that's inherently human. I think that's a product of living in a society where criticizing artists is a profession. It's we're we again, one of those things that we think of as normal is to trash artists
Yeah.
and our work, and to underpay artists and exploit artists and expect us to work for free and to
Mm.
not see it as real work. So there is a real oppression that comes at artists, and we internalize it, and it leaves us worrying constantly that the work won't be good. And then, secondly, we all worry that our work will have no impact, that nobody's going to care about it, that we're all alone with it.
Mm.
And if you know, if as an artist you knew that other people care about the work you're creating as much as you do, you would never stop making work. You would never get stalled. Yeah.
Fascinating. Great response. How can artists stay authentic in a world driven by algorithms and commercial pressures?
Yes, that is the million dollar question.
Mm,
Um, and that is the key and the path to our best work.
mm,
Because if you're creating work that you think the market wants, well, the market changes all the time and the market doesn't even know what it wants. It thinks it knows, whatever it is.
mm,
Um, and I tell my students all the time, forget about being original, forget about creating that work that nobody's created.
mm,
If you're authentic, if you write genuinely about yourself,
mm,
you do two things at the same time. You're going to create work that is absolutely fresh and unique because there's no one else like you. And you're going to create work that's universal because whatever your issues are, guess what? We all have those issues.
mm,
So if you write something authentic, it will be both fresh and unique and it will appeal to a lot of people.
mm,
So authenticity, that is the key to talent. You know, there's a lot of discussion. What is talent? Can you teach talent? Talent is the ability to be yourself. That's
correct.
all it is.
Correct.
And the most important thing to me about our film school is that it's an environment where artists are encouraged to be themselves, where they feel the safety to try to explore and find out, like, who actually am I?
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. And your response gives me a segue to my next question, which is on the Independent Film School. What inspired you to found the Film School? You know, over 60,000 artists have been part of the school. What have you learned from teaching so many creatives?
Um, what inspired me to create the school is that I needed a job to pay the bills.
Okay. Okay.
And that's how it began. I couldn't
Mm,
get a job. This was 20 years ago now. It was 2006. I couldn't get a job. I applied for a dog walking job. I couldn't get that job either. But I was a part of a couple of different writing groups, and I noticed that writers kept coming to me for feedback. I had a knack for it. So I was like, why don't I keep giving people feedback on their work. Why don't I charge for it?
mm,
So I put the word out, and 8 writers showed up, and I had a class with 8 people. And here we are now. Yeah, 20 years later, over 60,000 artists consume my free content, at least at this point, and over 5,000 have enrolled in our various programs.
wow.
And yeah, it was really by accident. It
Mm,
was really an accident.
how
But
amazing.
as I started it, it was clearly so my wheelhouse. I did such a beautiful job of it. It was clear to me and everybody that I need to keep doing it.
Mm.
Yeah.
And what have you learned from, teaching so many creatives?
What have I not learned? I mean, first of all, everything I'm sharing with you right now, up till now, has been because of what I
Mm,
learned in having the privilege to
mm,
mentor other artists.
mm,
But two things I'll say specifically. One is just in terms of craft, you become much better at your craft when you teach what you know.
mm,
I saw that I was becoming a much better writer as I was teaching writing. And when I started to teach directing, I became a much better director as I taught directing. So that's one thing I learned. And then the other thing I learned is that my personal mission statement, which is to create artwork that moves our world towards the kind of world we want to live in,
mm,
the world that I describe in my movie, I learned that pretty much everybody has that mission statement. That
mm,
if you invite artists and remind artists that their work can make a difference and that they could join me um, in that mission, everybody signs up. I want to create work that's
mm.
going to move us in the right direction.
Very
Yeah.
interesting. Very interesting. And I have time for two more questions.
Okay.
You've spoken about building societies governed by caring rather than greed. Do you believe art can genuinely change society? And if so, how?
Well, I believe that art is one part of it.
Mm.
We need everybody involved.
Yeah.
We need scientists, we need farmers, we need policymakers, we need community builders, we need parents, we need everybody involved in building a society that is organized around the needs of human beings and the planet, and not around
Mm.
greed and fear. And so as artists, we have a key role in that, absolutely, because we are the voice of entire movements. We shape the worlds we live in. We are the architects. Everything around us was created by artists, was designed by artists.
Yeah.
So we shape the way people think, and
Yeah.
therefore the way people behave. And as artists, it's hard for us to remember that. Our society tells us that creativity is like fluff; it's extracurricular,
Mm.
and we have to remind ourselves that we're essential workers. We are
Correct.
pillars in human society.
Correct. Well said. And my last question for you, Ella. If audiences could leave your films, and if people who are my viewers and listeners uh, can leave with one lasting feeling or insight, what would you want it to be?
Um, I always say that effective leaders don't create followers; they
Mm.
create more leaders.
Mm.
And that's my goal in the independent film school, is to build artists up to lead.
Mm.
And I would want people to leave my films, my book, my courses, being reminded that real leadership is not about getting to tell people what to do. Real
Mm.
leadership is about moving a group of people towards making things better for everybody. And if that's your definition of leadership, we need everybody to take leadership. We need, and you are that person. Like, don't think little old me, I'm so small, other people are leaders. No, you have a human mind, and therefore you are a leader. And you could decide anytime. You don't have to be voted in. You don't have to have anybody tell you that you're a leader. You
Mm.
can decide to act like a leader by thinking, how can I move this group that I have access to towards, towards a goal that will benefit everybody.
Mm. Wow. And on that note, and your very powerful set of words, effective leaders create more leaders. Thank you, Ella, for speaking to me about your incredible journey. Thank you for speaking to me about your upcoming film, 100 billion followers. Good luck for the film. You talked to us about your book, How to Fail as an Artist. You also talked to us about the Independent Film School. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.